welcome to Summit Talks. Is this the best podcast setup ever?
Without a doubt.
We are here to talk a little bit about landmines today.
So landmines is a military weapon that has been around for quite some time. The problem we have with these landmines is that they don't distinguish between a soldier or a civilian. Whatever you see in the movies, it's not the way it is in reality. You know, the detonation is so fast, it happens in milliseconds.
So we are here at the summit. We have hiked all the way up here, had a beautiful day, and I'm here with Erik Tollefsen. He is head of weapons contamination at the International Committee of the Red Cross. It's a gorgeous day. We're sitting here by Lake Geneva with its beautiful view. I'm going to talk about landmines. Welcome, Erik. It's going to be so great to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and on this beautiful day with this beautiful view, it's really great to be here.
Is this the best podcast setup ever?
Without a doubt. What is the altitude we're at here?
1800, something like that, yeah. We are here to talk about landmines, a problem that has been around for a long time, a problem that had a lot of attention in the 90s, but sort of is back on the agenda again after being sort of dropping out of people's awareness. Just to start with, you work at the International Committee of the Red Cross, head of weapons contamination. What does that mean? What's your role?
Yeah, it's maybe not the best of all titles in terms of explaining it.
It sounds pretty cool.
I don't know. My unit is in the Department of Operations, so we are supporting all the field delegations, but also all the national societies, the 192 Red Cross and Red Crescent societies that are in the world in terms of challenges related to not just landmines but also other unexploded ordnance, and we also have a broader spectrum with the chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear hazards as well.
Maybe just to start, like, what are landmines? Like, what is it?
So landmines is a military weapon that has been around for quite some time. It's basically been used in various forms since black powder was introduced to the battlefield, and then it's become more and more sophisticated. And like everything in warfare, it's been a kind of a measures and countermeasure, a cat and mouse thing, where you have had the introduction of the machine gun that really made the infantry more resourceful, if you like. So the other side invented the main battle tank, the armoured tank. It was an armoured tractor at the time. And then, of course, to stop this armoured tractor, the landmine was invented. But this was a mine designed to take out and stop a tank from moving forwards. And then on the other side, it was invented a metal detector that can detect these metal-cased mines. These are the ones that has the size of a dinner plate. And then anti-personnel mines came in to slow down the clearance of these anti-tank mines. We now typically call anti-tank mines for anti-vehicle mines because they don't distinguish between a military vehicle like a main battle tank or an infantry fighting vehicle and, for instance, a school bus or an ambulance. So that's why we try to use words, because words are important, to show, that these mines, they do have a impact beyond, the battlefield, but also a impact on civilian population.
So basically, like when you say landmines, we mean this kind of range of two different kinds of mines, like anti-personnel, which is where people they step on them, and then anti-vehicle is where vehicles step on them.
Yeah, well, vehicles roll over them.
Yeah. I know step. Yeah,
exactly. No, this is important what you say, because from a legal point of view, and I'm not a lawyer, there's a convention, a legal framework that has banned anti-personnel mines, whereas there's no such distinct regulation for anti-vehicle mines.
Yeah.
But with anti-personnel mines, what is common for them is that they are victim activated.
Yeah.
which means that it's the person that walks down a path that will trigger this landmine, which would then result in harm. The problem we have with these landmines is that they don't distinguish between a combatant, so a soldier, or a civilian. They don't neutralize when the war ends. They will continue to be active for many, many years later. And myself, I've been involved in digging up landmines from, for instance, World War II, that have been under the sea, they've been in salt water, but they are still active.
Yeah. And this is really the main problems with these mines, like you say, that they don't distinguish between civilians and combatants, and that they stay for decades. And we see that right now all over the world in places where conflict has ended decades ago and still people get harmed. And that's really your job, right? To figure out like how to clear those places, how to help the communities to live there, and how to also, I guess, prevent them from being placed from the beginning.
Exactly. So you could go either further back, you can talk about mines, then you have land mines and sea mines.
Oh yeah,
and
sea mines as well, that's also
you
one thing.
have many different types. Then of land mines you have two distinct families. You have anti-vehicle mines and anti-personnel mines. And then of anti-personnel mines you have the ones that are the blast mines. You have the ones that are fragmentation mines, and we typically have a third category, which is the bounding mines. Those are the mines that, when they're being activated, they're being ejected up to about chest height of a human being and have a kill zone that is quite large, typically 27 to 30 meters radius.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, all of these kind of different things can feel very overwhelming and technical to, I think, a lot of people. What's the most important thing that you think people should know about landmines?
Maybe that whatever you see in the movies, it's not the way it is in reality. No, it's not so that you step on something, you hear a click, and if you stand still, it won't activate.
Oh, yeah.
You will never hear that click. You know, the detonation is so fast. It happens in milliseconds. It's a brutal thing. The other kind of misconception is there's a majority of children that are the victims and the survivors of these blasts. But children are so small and the blast is so powerful that most of them, they do not survive the blast. And also they are small, so they are closer to the
actual
seat
line.
Of the explosion, so that the impact on them would be so much more worse. Yeah.
And we see this from the data collection from around the world in different sort of areas where mines have been used, is that it has an overwhelming rate of civilian casualties. Civilians are the most harmed by this weapon. Do you have the figures of that? Do you know them by heart?
I should have been better prepared. But what I can tell you is that when the political discussions was going on, where states came together to discuss whether they should ban anti-personnel mines or not, this evidence-based approach, which was very much carried forward by my organization at that time, the International Committee of the Red Cross. That time we had, in most of these conflict zones, we had field hospitals with our own medical teams, and they would of course have records. And these records were collected, they were synthesized and brought together. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Robin Copeland, which was one of the pioneers here. The data was able to demonstrate very clearly that the majority of the victims, as you said, were civilians, but also that most of the accidents took place after the war had or the conflict had ended. So two major factors, which is really problematic, from a humanitarian point of view.
Yeah, and I think that's also why the mine ban treaty was negotiated. And I sort of want to get to, one of the points of this series is to also look at treaties and do they work? And I think in particular now when it feels like a lot of things are going backwards in the world and a lot of overwhelming challenges and threats are happening. It's also important to look at the solutions that exist and the kind of work that's happening to prevent these things from happening. And to me, when I started working on these kind of weapons issues in 2007, that was really like the Mine Ban Treaty was this kind of big success story, really incredible story, and it still is. But can you tell me a little bit about the treaty? Like, what is the treaty about?
So the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, the Ottawa Treaty, came into force first in 1997. Mm-hmm. And I think to remember that it's 164 state parties to the treaty. It has been a tremendous success because it's been global. Mm. It prohibits the production, it prohibits the trade, the sale, the transfer. It also states that sign up needs to commit to stockpile destruction, as well as supporting clearance and survey activities, as well as victim assistance and advocacy. Yeah. So it's quite a broadband commitment that states signed up to, but I think this has been part of the success. I was actually working in the field before the treaty came into place. I was working in places like southern Lebanon with the UN peacekeeping forces at the time. I have a military background. I was also working in Bosnia when the war started in 92, 93. And what we saw there is that independent on the resources were put into clearance of not just anti-personnel mines and anti-vehicle mines, but also other unexploded ordnance. Yeah. We saw that the rate of accidents were going up. Yeah. And as you pointed out, the majority were civilians. Yeah. And this persisted throughout the years. You know, we were training people, we were really building up capacities. I had a chance to work when the treaty was negotiated in the 90s. I was working in northern Iraq at the time, training Peshmergas on how to clear the minefields from the Iran-Iraq war. But still we saw the accidents rocketing. Yeah. It was only when the Ottawa Treaty came into force where we saw there was a stop to the production, the sales, the transfer, but stockpile destruction started happening, so the stores came down, and also clearance speeded up, and we saw the accidents dropping. Yeah. However, what we've seen in the past 2 years is that kind of sinus curve going down is now coming up again. And over the past 2 years, we've seen a hike in the figures with 22% in terms of accidents. And again, it's the majority are civilians, I think 85%. Yeah,
I remember there was this campaign that the world was going to be landmine free by 2025. I was just thinking about that the other day, like, oh, it's 2025. It felt like the future, like long time. Now we're here. So what happened with the success story? Like, did we run out of steam? Did governments change their mind? Why are we seeing this uptick in accidents and incidents again?
Okay, so let's try to unpack that one, because it's a big question you're asking me. So first of all, I think we just need to make it clear that the treaty has been a success. Yeah. You know, in all ways, and all right, this ambitious target of clearing all the mines all around the world by 2025 was not achieved, but still efforts are ongoing. Yeah. So the pace is there, the motivation is there. It's still happening. Yeah. But it takes a bit longer. Yeah. That said, the challenge now is that some member states have signaled that because of this new security situation, particularly in Europe, has forced them to review their state membership to the treaty, and either some have started the withdrawal or others are considering withdrawing from the treaty, which of course is extremely problematic, because this is such a important legal instrument under IHL.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, right now countries like Finland, Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia have announced that they are looking to withdraw from the Landmines Treaty, and there are different stages of that process. So it's 5 countries at the moment that are in the process of withdrawing from the landmine stream, which is of course a worrying trend. I think a lot of this is driven by seeing what's happening in Ukraine and this kind of new worry in Europe, because these are European countries that have withdrawn, and European countries close to Russia that are worried. So have you felt that there's been a shift in opinions around landmines these last few years?
What I have yet to see is some good arguments in terms of military utility based on, why anti-personnel mines are needed in the current security situation. And you mentioned Ukraine, for instance. It's interesting, we hear from, for instance, non-edited media, some kind of quasi-military experts are saying that they have certain observations, all right. But when I read really well-researched reports, they are pointing at, what is having this military effectiveness in Ukraine, both on the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, is not anti-personnel mines. Yeah. There are many other weapons, and I will not sit and mention them here.
Yeah. I hear that a lot. It's like one of the most common things that people say right now when you talk about the landmines treaty, or of those that are critical or supportive of these withdrawals. It is that it's been proven so effective in Ukraine to stop Russian forces from coming in. And I think it ties into a little bit to what we talked earlier, this kind of almost intentional confusion of terms and what's a landmine. I know that there's people say that landmines are really effective, but sometimes they're not talking about the anti-personnel mines. They're talking about anti-vehicle mines, which are not banned, and it's not where they are withdrawing from these states. And kind of almost using this kind of difficulty for maybe politicians and the public to really keep track of all these terms. It's specialized terms. It's quite hard sometimes to understand the difference.
It's a really good point, Bea, but I don't necessarily think it's done deliberately. I think it's just that people, they don't understand the difference, or they are not able to distinguish between the two, because sometimes they are used in combination and sometimes not. However, we are today in 2025. We're talking about a weapon from the last century. We have moved on from that, and we see that modern armies, they like to see themselves as a network-based defense force. They are interconnecting everything. Anti-personnel mines is the opposite of that. If you look at studies that have been made following the war in Vietnam in the 60s and 70s, if you look at studies from the war or the two wars in Iraq, you can actually see that modern armies are reporting that more of their own soldiers were killed by their own anti-personnel mines that they had laid and what they had mapped than the adversary's soldiers. So I just really would like states, when they're considering withdrawing, to do some research on the military utility. Another part is that many of the countries, and you named a few, they are at the Northern Hemisphere. In the Northern Hemisphere, we have a phenomenon that comes back every year. It's called winter. I love it a lot. However, if you look at anti-personnel mines in particular, they don't mix very well with those 7 months of winter that you see up north. Because obviously the snow that comes on top, the ice, it renders them useless. And it's really difficult to see where they are. And it also tends to make landmines shift in the terrain, so that when you are going to remove them in order to take on that land or to have maneuverability for your own troops, it makes it extremely challenging.
Yeah, and because that's another thing that you hear a lot from people who are advocating for landmines right now, is that they say, we're so much better, but we're going to map it really well. We're going to clear it afterwards. We're going to be they're going to be self-destructive. It's going to be very don't worry about it. We got it under control. But you're saying that that's not possible.
Well, I'm saying that I worked within this field for many years, more than 3 decades. I've yet to see an example of a perfectly laid, marked, mapped minefield, where you know the map references the reality. Also, to that, you mentioned self-destruct. There's this kind of notion of that there's this new mine type, which is referred to as a smart mine or a non-persistent mine that can be launched over an area. It can be deployed either by artillery, by helicopter, by rockets, and then after a certain time it will self-neutralize or self-destruct or a combination of the two. That's not something new. This has been around since the 60s. And I have hands-on experience from many contexts where I've been dealing with these things, and I've seen that the failure rate on the self-destruct function often is as high as 50%. And that's one thing. The other part is that a lot of these, they contain chemicals, though very small elements, but still elements of depleted uranium. And, you know, you mentioned Ukraine, for instance, which is the breadbasket of Europe or the world. Would you like to have farmland, prime farmland, seeded with depleted uranium? Is that really helpful? You know? So it's kind of, we need to start thinking beyond the present, but also think of the future.
And that's another thing that I hear a lot. Like, well, look at Ukraine. They haven't had so many civilian casualties from landmine lines, but of course they are being laid in war zones at the moment from both sides, where civilians have left. And again, like you mentioned earlier, the number of victims will continue over decades. So it will kill people in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. And that has to be calculated now as well when you make these decisions. And I think that people are seeing, and politicians particularly, they have incentives to think short term. Because they need to get re-elected, they need to be popular for the day. But these are things that will have consequences 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, we saw just this past weekend in Bosnia, a young man died from stepping on a landmine in a forest. He was out with his farm animals in the forest, and that was a mine from 30 years ago, 11 years before he was born. These things, I mean, I can only imagine the harm it's going to cause Ukrainians for decades. It's going to be a terrible legacy. Do we know how long it would take, like how many mines have been put there in these 2 years, and how long would it take to clear that? It's hard to say how many mines, of course, but I think also people forget when you use mines, you use a lot of them.
Exactly. Following every conflict, you would have some expert turning up and with a lot of confidence saying how many million mines were laid and how many square kilometers and how much money it will cost and how long. I worked with this for 30 years. I can't make those predictions because I don't have the data. I run by data. But what I can tell you, first of all, it depends on where the landmines are, what kind of priority this area has, how close it is to civilian population and so on. That's one factor. The other thing is, do we know where they are? Because obviously if we knew that it was only in a certain area, we could mark it, fence it, and then deal with it as time comes, and we could try to avoid the vulnerable population to enter into that area. But very often we see that people want to go back to their places of origin, and no one knows where the contamination is. Also, we need to remember that the contamination is not just resulted of anti-personnel mines and anti-vehicle mines, but you have as many unexploded ordnance. And you mentioned this conflict.
What is the unexploded ordnance? Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so basically it is a weapon system that is thrown, fired, projected in any way into a target, and as per design meant to detonate in the target, but because it has certain safety functions for handling, it failed to detonate.
Okay.
But it's lying there.
So it's like leftover stuff, things that have remained there after the war that didn't detonate.
Exactly. And those, they have a lot more destructive power, typically, than an anti-personnel mine or an anti-vehicle mine. So the consequences are more dire when they are being triggered. Yeah. In Ukraine alone, we learned that, just of the type of the heavy artillery, so the 152 millimeter and 155 millimeter field artillery, there's been 26,000 of them fired every day. So if we use a very, very conservative, extremely conservative figure, and we say that 2% fail to detonate the target, I think that the figure is much higher, maybe 10 times that figure. We are talking about hundreds and hundreds of unexploded ordnance in the field every day, and you can imagine the day there's a cessation of hostilities. When hands are being shaken and people are supposed to move back home. You have the ground littered with these things. And of course, you're coming in, you need machines to excavate the ground, to rebuild. And of course, before you do that, you need to clear. So it would not only slow down, but it would be very dangerous work. It would be very costly work, and it will be an impediment to, bringing in peace and stability to the region. Yeah,
and we've seen that now, for example, in Syria, after the fall of the Assad regime, things are changing. People are coming back, and that's when the accidents start happening. It's also a very natural human instinct to move back. People want to go back home. So after being displaced from war, and we see that in all wars, people want to come back. And that's when they run into these things. So
this week I received a report, and I'm very proud that my team, the team of ICRC operating in Syria, had in a town centre been able to disarm a large aircraft bomb, which then was rendered safe. Yeah. And we got a really nice thank you letter from the minister, because then that meant that the people now could move back into the houses, and all of them had been really scared, about this bomb, because everyone knew about it. And we also worked really closely with the Syrian Arab Red Crescent Society, which was helping us evacuate people while we were disarming this bomb.
One of the things that I also find, we're sitting here in this gorgeous nature in Switzerland. It's very safe. And when I've been talking about landmines this last 2 years, and I can feel the sort of, and I can understand people are very scared in Europe, for example, very worried about coming wars or invasions and things like that. But I sort of heard a lot of people say oh, well, what do you know? You sit in safe Switzerland, for example. You ask people in Ukraine. But I think that so much of this work is based on people's lived experiences in these countries, and also the organizations that go in after to clear the landmines, which is extremely dangerous work. You have a military background, you've been in the military, you know why these weapons are so bad. Do you feel like it's not really taken into consideration right now?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's the backdrop that have changed, that we went through the early 90s with glasnost and perestroika and end of Cold War, and people were really happy about that. We saw a more peaceful period, and we saw less and less conflicts. And now lately we can see that things have turned to definitely the worse. We see that there are more international armed conflicts taking place, and the magnitude of them, the number of people and weapons involved, and thereby the consequences are of a greater magnitude. I think politicians, I think people are waking up, but also one kind of note that I'll make as Erik Tollefsen and not on a professional note is that maybe, when we had signed the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention in the late 90s, we thought that was it.
Yeah.
The job has been done. Now we can kind of trickle on and just get a few more states on board, but it will not ever go back into what it was. And now we're faced with a new reality, and this treaty is put to a test.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important for not just states, but also for civil society and individuals to mobilize and think about this.
Yeah.
That, one, we need to discuss this issue about military utility, because, as I mentioned here, I don't think that has really been discussed.
No.
Not thoroughly.
Yeah.
And when you kind of weigh up with everything else you would like to use your military spending on, is really anti-personnel mine, and
restarting a whole new production because they're not being produced anymore.
Obsolete weapon from the last century. Is that what you want to invest? Is that where you want to invest your resources? I mean, this is one question.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we have demonstrated before the consequences, the human suffering. We're getting a nice backdrop here. That it causes. But I think also we need to put a bit of reality into this, because we mentioned, that the anti-personnel mines are old and obsolete, but also on the other side, the methodology for militaries to advance through mined areas has really accelerated.
Yeah.
And if we go back, for instance, to 2003, where Allied forces staged in Kuwait was going to go through what was called the Saddam line, Saddam Hussein line, which was the most massive combined minefield the world had seen up to now. We're talking about the combination of anti-vehicle mines and anti-personnel mines. They cleared through that.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a single casualty, or they didn't lose any equipment. Do you know how long time they spent to go through the biggest minefield in the world? 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it's just blasting through.
I didn't know that, but how is that not evidence that, Finland or Poland, what are you going to do? Slow them down for 2 hours?
Well, exactly. But these are the stuff where the advocacy community, but also states, need to bring this to the table. We need to have a facts-based decision or discussion, sorry. We have also examples from, for instance, Afghanistan, which are more recent, from 2010, 2011, where US forces were clearing through a minefield in an operation. So this was military breaching, where they say that with the machines, it went more than 10 times faster than any kind of manual clearance would have done. So we have these documents, we have this evidence. It's just to be in the room and to discuss it.
Yeah.
But that needs
and for people
trust.
to know about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
and this is also the point of this podcast, right? I think that, I knew that there was all these points about it doesn't really slow down forces so much, but I had never heard it sort of this concretely, the largest minefield in the world, and the forces went through it in 2 hours. What's the point of them then? If they are going to be there for 30 years and harm your own people for 30 years after that, or 40 years, or 50 years, or even longer than that.
No, exactly. And if you read the reports by those generals that have been interviewed following that campaign, they said that the mines that they used themselves later on was harming more of their own soldiers.
Than their opponents.
There wasn't actually a single evidence that it had killed a single adversary soldier.
And this is the point of the sort of evidence base as well. What I get really frustrated about is that there's a lot of politicians and governments taking these decisions, and they're not really asked for evidence. They just they're making these statements and said, oh, well, we need to have them because of military utility. And they just use the words, but they don't produce any evidence to back it up, or any evidence that things have changed since the last evidence showed that they were not useful or that they were not needed. And I find that very frustrating, because I feel like the the burden of proof is put on us always, and we have to justify all of these things. But the weapons companies or the people in charge who want to make this decision, they just have to say some blanket statement, and then people just take it as truth.
Exactly. And what I've heard also lately, to follow on that, is that the arguments which was used by the humanitarian side in the negotiations in the late 90s, that landmines were very inexpensive, they were very cheap to produce, but very expensive to clear, is now being used the other way around. That states can buy landmines because they are so inexpensive, they're such a cheap part of defense. But that's not necessarily true. Maybe that was true, during the Cold War, where you could produce the millions and millions of mines for $10 per piece. But today, when you had certain, industry standards, such as NATO standards for manufacture and transport and storage and so on, these weapons will not be inexpensive. They will be very, very expensive. And we looked at the cost of one of these new anti-vehicle mines, and one piece was 27,000 euros for one unit, right?
And these are the ones they just put...
Well, actually, this is the one similar to this microphone. It comes on a tripod like this, and it fires a projectile. But that's the newer version. It's actually from the Cold War as well. But that's the newer version, more advanced version. But 27,000 euros, and that's not $10, right?
No.
So I think it's very important to distinguish between these things.
Do you think that we will see a huge sort of research, like re-emergence of landmines and restart production? Or do you think it's just this kind of withdrawals, it's just posturing? Do you see the international community maybe rallying against landmines, and that this is like a wake-up call that people's going to really shake people and kind of mobilize more people? Like, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future kind of impact of landmines that we see?
Okay. I tend to take an optimistic pose.
Yeah.
And what I hope for is that states, and most states, they have a defense research and development establishment, that they go into, and use the best resources they have to look at the military utility aspect, so that, the politicians can weigh it up against the political capital and also the humanitarian impact, and then they can have the lawyers looking at the legal aspects, so that you get a more complete picture instead of just using this kind of hearsay. So that's the optimistic or the hope I have what will happen next, and then I hope that the reason will follow.
Yeah. And what do you think people can do? Like what like if people are watching this, what can people do about this?
People are smart. People are intelligent. And I think a movement starts with individuals, speaking to other individuals and forming opinions. I think today what is important is to be critical to what you read, what you hear, what you see, particularly from non-edited media. I've seen on, for instance, channels like YouTube, there's a lot of people that make claims that they visited such and such context and have seen the military utility or the effectiveness of certain weapon system. But when you start to unpack this, it's not, realistic. It's not factual. It's just, looking at the world to a keyhole.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like a lot of people feel really overwhelmed by the kind of feeling that nothing we do matters anymore. But one of the things is that the treaty and the work around landmines have really saved a lot of lives. We take all the wins for granted, and then we only focus on problems. Like, are there any areas, and I was asking a little bit earlier on Instagram, people for questions, and I got this question, are there any places now that have been declared like mine-free, that have solved the problem? Like, are there any countries that have been declared mine-free in this process?
Oh yeah, there's many.
Yeah.
And I've been so fortunate to be working with some of them. One I would like to mention is Chile, which had a massive landmine problem with both anti-personnel mines and anti-vehicle mines. They had it down south at Picton Island, which is very close to the Falkland Islands.
Yeah.
They had minefields on all its borders to neighboring states, Peru, Argentina, and so forth. And also they had the landmines up to 5,000 meters altitude above sea level. So it was really, really demanding terrain conditions and so on. But they managed to do it by themselves with very, very limited international support. And there's several African states and so on that are able to overcome the problem. So as I said, I want to have a positive stance. Yeah. In terms of the reduction of accidents, we also need to bear in mind that it's not just the victim or the possible survivor themselves, but it's also this knock-on effect. In many of the studies we have done around the world, we find out that for some reason, typically 87%, it's a number that comes back, of the victims are adult males, and that the accidents are taking part in rural, not urban context. Yeah. And then when we start to unpack these figures, we find out that these are typically of the lowest income communities. We see that these are typically the communities that have the lowest level of education. We see that these people, majority of them were fathers. So, the children will also become victims. The wife will become victim because now you took away the person that was the breadwinner for that family and maybe that community, maybe the parents as well. Yeah. So the knock-on effects is not just that number, that one person, but it's actually how that impacts that community. And you mentioned Switzerland, every kind of public office here you can access with a wheelchair. If you are impaired by blindness, you can take the train. It's not like that in Mozambique. It's not like that in all countries where we see landmines being a problem. Yeah.
So it's also a justice and equality issue.
Exactly. Thanks.
Yeah. All the more reasons why we have to keep fighting for this. And it's just one of those things that I've been thinking about a lot lately, that even issues that feel like we won, like we have to keep, like it's never finished, right? Like it's always work in progress, and it's always kind of and some people might find that depressing and like you're never going to be finished with this. But I can find it a little bit kind of like a relief, like you have permission to not have to finish it. Like it's just ongoing work that's going to have to be done for a long time. And the more we do, the more we can help people and the more we can protect. And because I sometimes feel like people, if a country violates a treaty, like the landmine treaty, for example, it's useless and the treaty is useless and it doesn't stop this one country, but it has done so much good and all of that is worth something. Like every life you save, and because of the treaty, you can also imagine that the assistance will be better in the future, even if somebody violates it. Like all of these things makes it worth it and makes it the world a better place because this treaty exists.
Exactly, and I worked in the field before these treaties came into place, and it felt like, in Greek philosophy, the work of Sisyphus, the one who was convicted to push this big rock, this boulder up the mountain, only to find out that when you reach the summit, here we are, the boulder would roll down on the other side, and he had to start all over again. Yeah. That was the feeling until legal frameworks such as the Ottawa Treaty came into place. And then we saw accidents starting to drop.
Good. Well, we have to make a descent down on the other side as well. We made it up here to the top. The sun is starting to go lower. So I think it's time for us to continue our hike and walk down. But thank you so much for joining Summit Talks. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and really inspirational to hear about your work. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for taking me here. I've never been here before, and it's such a beautiful view.
It's a ridiculous
view. Fantastic day, and such an important topic. So let's hope not this ends up to the work of Sisyphus.
Yeah, exactly.